All right. Good morning, everybody. This is the meeting of the Rail Trail Advisory Committee for the town of Needham. We haven't met in a while, so why don't we go around the Zoom room and do introductions. My name is Stacy. I'm the staff liaison to this committee, and I am the director of Park and Recreation. Shane?
I'm Shane Mark. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works, and I'm 10 months into the job currently.
James?
James Goldstein, Bay Colony Rail Trail, excuse me, Bay Colony Rail Trail Association and president.
John?
John Bullion, former Needham Select Board member and current chair of the Board of Assessors and town meeting member.
Dimitri?
Dimitri Gordenberg, also member of the BCRTA and an abutter on the trail.
Gerstle?
Chris Gerstle, chairman of the Needham Park and Rec Commission.
Adam?
Adam Schulman, Needham resident and also member of the BCRTA.
And Hannah?
Hello, everyone. I am the Assistant Director of Park and Rec.
All right. So I left a couple things on here. James usually runs our meetings by default. So the first one up is the rail trail extension to Chestnut Street, which is actually the one he asked me to keep on there.
Excuse me. So, as you know, I think there was a feasibility study completed under the supervision of the board of the DPW in July 2020. It laid out 4 options to extend to Chestnut Street and to cross Chestnut Street to get to Needham Junction Station. Even though the Bay Colony Rail Trail Association has been trying to push DPW since that time to move the project forward, it has not moved forward at all. There's been obviously some very significant staff changes at DPW, and the folks who were in contact about it are no longer there or no longer responsible. I understand from Shane it's now in his lap, but he's, he has a million things in his lap and is still getting up to speed. I know. So do you, Stacy. But anyway, the reason I wanted to raise this is the select board each year does a goal setting exercise. And if you saw, I believe I sent it to all of you. I sent it to Stacy and CC'd the committee. The select board's goals for the next fiscal year, 24-25, are being finalized tomorrow evening at their meeting. At the last select board meeting, I had written a letter on behalf of the Bay Colony Rail Trail Association indicating that we thought this project should be moved up in their goal-setting process. It is now to move forward in 36 months or later, which is another 3 years, which would be 6+ years from the feasibility study. And it was in their goals last year. And all that the goal last year was evaluate funding options for the rail trail extension from High Rock Street to Needham Junction. So it's not a capital expenditure envisioned in this goal. It's to take the next step in understanding whether there are funding sources out there. Now, I wrote a letter and I suggested that goal get moved up, and I changed the goal to read, select a preferred alternative and evaluate funding, etc. I sent that on September 12th. I actually attended the meeting, and at the very beginning of the meeting, that they give residents a few minutes to talk about things. I talked about this. I've also communicated individually with 3 of the 5 select board members. A couple of them didn't get back to me to make the case. In any case, I would suggest, if the advisory committee is in agreement, that we send something to the select board indicating we think this should be moved up. Again, it would take some staff time. I don't think a lot to evaluate funding sources, and the association is more than happy to assist with anything. But waiting another 3 years, I think, doesn't make sense if we're serious about this project. Now, one other point, and that is there is a new, and this is actually on our agenda, Mobility Planning and Coordination Committee, and Marianne Cooley, the chair of the select board, suggests that this issue goes before them and gets in the mix with all the other potential mobility projects. I totally agree with that, but I also think this next step on the extension would better inform the mobility committee about this option and the preferred alternative and potential funding sources. So anyway, I've actually drafted, if in this discussion people agree it should be moved up, I have a draft memo from the group which I can share, and it can be edited and modified as you all see fit, and then submit to the select board. So I'd like to hear from other people, and Stacy, I don't mean to take your role, but on this issue, and see if we have some kind of a consensus that the project should move forward. I'll say just one more thing. It was explicitly in the goals in the I guess current fiscal year. Nothing has happened on it, and the reason it got there in the first place is we made the case that it increases the value and accessibility of the trail tremendously, and it obviously does. Anyway, I'll stop, and hopefully we can have a discussion about it.
John?
I'll jump in, and James, you're absolutely right that it does, enhance the trail immeasurably. But I'm wondering if maybe to the next step, the logical step, is for us to communicate this item to the new mobility committee where this is going. You are, as I understand, an appointee to that. Oh, you will be?
Well, that's on our agenda for today. I don't know.
Okay, but I thought you were being appointed from the BCRTA.
Oh,
to the mobility committee.
Not to my knowledge, but I don't know.
Oh, okay, then let me say, from what I understand, you may very likely possibly be appointed as a member from BCRTA. That means this committee would obviously necessitate, sending another member to the mobility study committee. I think what we have, this is a classic case of there's innumerable competing financial interests that the town is wrestling with right now. If any of you have been watching, one of the most recent major events that has taken place is that the estimated cost of the Pollard and Mitchell projects has increased from roughly $325 million to now $465 million, or as I have said to people that I talk to, let's just round it up to $1 billion. The fact is, it's an awful lot of money. We have the DPW project that was just proposed. In addition to that, there's the quiet zone. In addition to that, yes, there's the extension to the junction. I support very strongly the extension to the junction. My concern is I want to make sure we're moving it to the select board's goals, from my experience, doesn't mean it's going to get looked at, funded, or anything. Because what happens is they always load up. We always loaded up a whole lot of goals, and that required staff time and funding, and that ultimately goals were continued to be pushed and pushed and pushed. So I think I think that the logical step here is to make this recommendation or request of the mobility committee, which this is going to be they're going to be dealing with this. Sending it, communicating to the select board isn't going to get, I mean, I think that we are all pushing behind the scenes to get this done. This is important for the purposes of the South Section Rail Trail. So I would respectfully suggest that we consider sending James's motion. I would like to hear it again to the mobility committee for them to take it up as quickly as possible. Because I certainly understand the challenges that the select board has with the many competing interests and the money that's necessary to fund those interests. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question, I guess. So this may be just my lack of familiarity with, that whole process of the goals and whatever. But what is there, and if there is, what is the practical impact of having this on the list of goals or not having this on the list of goals? Is there an actual mandate that comes out of having it on the list, or is it just like a nice list that people refer to?
Well, let me respond to that, having lived on the board for 18 years, is that there weren't a goals list prior to my getting on the board. And then we started developing a goals list. And the reason for that is that all 5 members of the board had particular issues that they had an interest in seeing moved forward, in the process and coming to fruition. And I think the formulation of the goals list came about as a result of the need to have an orderly dynamic of requests by select board members and others from the community to try to prioritize or try to put on the list those items that are important to not only the board, but to the members of the community. And over the years, the list grew and grew and grew to the point where it became clear from all the ideas that people have, even though we think we sleep at night, we're constantly thinking and constantly calling Kate the next morning saying, hey, I've got an idea. And what Kate would regularly say to any number of us through the years was, well, if you're going to add another goal, I need you to take one off. And I'm like, I don't want to take off any of mine. And she said, "We'll talk with your colleagues." And what would happen is the list just kept growing and growing and growing. And now you have a new group of select board members who have come in with desires and wants and ideas, which is great. But again, there's only so much staff time. There's only so much money. As I said to every one of the select board members through there and working with them on their election campaigns, is just keep in front of you two core questions. When somebody says, I want this, I want this, I want this, is how's it going to get paid for? And how much is it going to cost, and who's going to pay for it? So everything, Dimitri, has to be.
Yeah, I guess I get all that. My question is, what does it actually mean in practice? Is there a process? Is there,
There is a process, and the process and what we're doing is what the select board is doing is forming a mobility study committee, and they're going to look at holistically transportation throughout the town and how it, how you move people. I mean, really from a streamlined, how do you move people? How do you deal with traffic? I haven't seen the charge of the mobility committee. But I was speaking with Mary Ann as well, James, and she made, her feeling was that they really want to move everything transportation-wise into the mobility committee to look at it as a whole and then make determinations on priorities. And again, priorities are going to be driven on funding. And just one last comment, Dimitri, which is with all of the goals that the board has every year, how do things get done and how do things not get done? The fact is, there are things that naturally rise to a priority level that present themselves as more urgent and more of a need, as opposed to a desire or a want. So, and that's really where it comes. There's a massive list of goals, and as you've seen, and you just can't do everything. We all have goals in our own homes. And, the cosmic joke is, the list of things that my wife would like me to do, they're on a list. We get to them, things get prioritized, and we all do this. The town is no different. So let me turn it back, James, that you have your hand up.
Is that okay, Stacy?
Absolutely.
It's not a mandate, obviously. I'm responding to Dimitri. However, it does mean something in that it's on the stove, on the front burner or medium burner. It's not pushed aside. And I know that in Kate Fitzpatrick evaluation each year, there is a review of progress goal by goal. And so there's some motivation associated with having it as a goal. And my suggestion is to make it a short-term goal to take the next step, not to spend any money. But yes, John is right. It is staff time, and it is competing with many, many other projects. But this is a very minor effort to select a preferred alternative and evaluate potential funding sources. So, and again, it was a goal last year, and it's 3 years since the feasibility study. So and I agree, John, it should go to the mobility committee, but I think it actually gives them better information to take this next step. And my understanding is the mobility planning committee is going to do a master planning exercise, and I believe that's going to take years. And I would rather at least take this next step. If we can identify a preferred alternative and the funding source, I mean, external to the town, why wouldn't we go forward with it? Before 5-10 years from now. Anyway, that's my case.
Okay, so basically, James is recommending that this committee sends a letter to the select board about their goals, adding this back onto their goals. John, you're recommending that it goes through the mobility committee, I guess.
I think that the proper channel is going through the mobility committee. And James, I wouldn't be satisfied with this taking 5 to 10 years myself. And I'm not as up to date on other items that are competing for funding. There's no question the quiet zone is. The next item we're going to get into and discuss is the community way, which does play part and parcel to this discussion and other discussions, i.e. the quiet zone. And so that's, I know that we both have things to discuss about that. So I think that, let me ask you this, would it be possible to flip this conversation to get back to right after we talk about the next item on the agenda?
I mean, I guess I'm in charge, so I get to do anything. So sure, let's do that. Let's go to the next item, but we do have to make a vote if we do want to send a letter to on behalf of the city. Right. So we have to vote one way or the other.
Yeah, right. and I just want to say one last thing. I agree that it should go to the mobility committee. I have no problem with that at all. I think it should. I think that this next step is consistent with that, and it takes us one step closer to understanding the project and its potential funding better.
James, I'm fine sending it to both the mobility and the select board if that satisfies your need. And
absolutely,
I'm satisfied with that. So that's fine.
Would you like to make a motion to send it to both the select board and the mobility committee?
I will make that motion. I'd also like if James would be kind enough to read his motion again.
Well, it's not in the form of a motion, but I have a draft memorandum, which, Stacy, if you can help me technologically, I can share it with the group on the screen. But in any case, here's the last point. We respectfully request that the select board reconsider the timing of addressing the rail trail extension to Needham Junction and include the following language in the FY 2024-25 initiatives begin FY 24-25. And it is select the preferred alternative and evaluate funding options for the rail trail extension from High Rock Street to Needham Junction.
Why don't we start the first part saying that, sending it to both the mobility committee and the select board?
Well, this is about the goals of the select board.
But it's also going to be, we're also asking it to be a goal, an immediate goal of the mobility planning committee.
Okay, happy to do that. I mean, that committee hasn't been formed yet. So, well, Stacy, I have one specifically for this purpose, but it's not very different, but it's more succinct than the one you're showing.
Okay, you can go ahead and share it if you'd like.
Okay, how do I do it is the question. Oh, share screen. Okay,
Yeah,
hold
I
on.
should have a share screen.
Now I have to hold on a second. I need to find it. Oh, I think this is it. Yes. Okay. So this is what I drafted, and again, no one's had input into this, so I understand it could be modified very significantly, but these are the points I'm suggesting. So the first paragraph is what I've told all of you about the September 12th meeting.
I don't see it.
Oh, is it not being shared, Stacy?
No, I can see it.
I can
Oh.
see it, yeah.
I can see it.
I can't see it. How do I see it?
I don't know.
I've
Make
got
it a
just
full
little-
screen, John.
Excuse me?
Make it a full screen. You probably just have all of our faces on the right side of your screen. Make it a full screen. You should be able to see everything.
We've also lost you, John. We can't see you anymore. So I wonder if you're having just some technical difficulties over there.
Oh, we lost John. We picked up Deb.
Okay, there it is. I just had it. Hold on.
Okay. So very quickly, the first paragraph is reiterating the goals situation. The first bullet, excuse me, is reiterating the feasibility study, that there was no that it was a goal last year. No progress was made, and we don't think it makes sense to wait another 3 years. And then the request I just read with the actual language in bold: select a preferred alternative and evaluate funding options. And then I make a couple of points about that. The goal would not require any capital expenditures in the coming year, but would progress the town's understanding of the project. And moving this goal forward will provide the Mobility Planning and Coordination Committee with invaluable information for assessing the viability of the extension in the context of the town's overall mobility plan. And then I say we look forward to helping the town move the project forward. So that's the draft.
Is there a way to, in that I guess next to last bullet point with the bold, is there a way to just modify the language slightly to make it clear that this would be done through the mobility committee?
Well, there are excuse me, there are two separate processes here. One is the select board's goals, and that's what this is addressing. We could also state that we will suggest that it also be a priority goal of the mobility committee. But to me, that's a longer term process. And this is a little premature because they're going to look at dozens, I think, of mobility related projects. But we can certainly say we will support this in the mobility planning committee as well.
All right. I was actually thinking about like whether that like something about directing the mobility committee to select the preferred alternative, something along those. I don't know if directing is the right language, but something about these goals, the things that we are asking to be done could be done through the mobility committee. That's all.
Well, it seems to me like the reason it's fallen off the docket is because it's not connected to what the town views as a priority currently, right? And so the way back in, whether it's through the mobility committee or something, is to connect it to a set of goals that the town does consider a priority. So when I think about the mobility committee, I mean, it seems like we would need to frame this in a way that connects to some part of that charter, right? Either to expand, I don't know what it is, but to increase mobility, for more citizens in town or something. Like it's gotta fit, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean the reason why it's important is because I think it's from what I understand of the mobility committee, it's a very clear fit because it enables access to the commuter rail station via the trail, right? So that's an accessibility and for commuting issue. So that was when I was on the committee that revamped the various transportation things, and that was sort of what they kept asking about when like that the bit of the rail trail remit that they were interested in was precisely that, the rail trail connection to the commuter rail.
This is helpful. Let's see.
Yeah, this is helpful, Stacy. I do think that there's a little confusion here, though, in this discussion, in that this mobility planning and coordinating committee is just getting off the ground. I don't know when its first meeting will be, but it is going to take some time. As you see, it's a comprehensive transportation plan that is the big item, I think, here. I haven't read the whole thing, and that's going to take time appropriately. And what I'm suggesting here is we take the next mini step to look at potential funding and to select a preferred alternative. And I actually think it'll help inform when this mobility planning committee considers various projects, this project would at least be better understood. And we can advocate for it at the appropriate time with this committee, if we think it is a priority at that point.
That makes sense to me, and maybe even take it a step further, James. I mean, could it be within the next step to consider breaking the project into smaller chunks, right? Like, it seems like maybe I don't know if that makes any sense, like physically, but it seems like maybe part of the reason that it's getting pushed is because compared to, a new school, it's a big chunk of money, but it's just not anywhere on the list of priorities, and that makes sense to me. But if we could somehow frame it as a smaller bites, I don't know if that's even
well. It is a small bite, frankly. I mean,
I guess that's true, relatively speaking.
As
right?
John says, are hundreds of millions of dollars. This is $1.5 million roughly, and CPC might even fund it. So
it's small enough.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to do this project, at most you'd have two phases. One would be the 1,200 feet approximately from High Rock to Chestnut, and then the Chestnut Street crossing, which there are multiple options laid out in the feasibility study. But you wouldn't break up the trail extension. It's only 1,200 feet. It's one project, and it's not that much money. And once you mobilize an engineering firm and a construction firm,
you might as well do it.
James,
yeah. Okay.
James, let me ask you a question, because I know that when we'll talk about this more in the next agenda item. But if, and I don't know the answer, but if we were able to clear the commuter rail back to the junction, would that allow us to make the connection on the right of way all the way to the south, to the rest of the south section?
Well, one of the concepts is rail with trail, most of the way, but then you have the elevation change to get to Chestnut. I mean, there is not room on the rail bridge for a trail. No.
What if you don't have the commuter rail train there?
Well, that's a whole nother issue.
All right. I think we need to move forward because we have a few other items on here. I think there's a motion on the floor to present this letter to Select Board and the Mobility Committee. Is that correct? Do I have a second?
Second.
Because you are all virtual, we're going to go person by person to vote. James?
Yes, I think it's premature for the Mobility Committee, but yes.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Okay. The rest of us are staff and we can't vote. And Adam, you're our unofficial members.
Yes.
All right. So James, will you update that draft, send it to me, and then I can send it to the Select Board on behalf of the Rail Trail Committee.
I'll do that after this call.
Perfect. Thank you. Next up is the Needham Newton Community Way. This is Shane's favorite committee that he is on, so I'm going to let him lead this. It's very exciting stuff.
It is very exciting. Very exciting. Just an update to everybody. So we wrapped up our Needham Newton Community Way feasibility study on Friday. we're getting ready to post the final report. We received the final report from GPI, and so we'll post that final report onto our website as soon as possible. I just need to talk to Tyler when he gets in here. Essentially, it studied two different options for those of you that may not be familiar with it. Two options were bikes peds only, or an option of bike ped slash electric shuttle. At the end of the day, the recommendation from the working group is to pursue the option of bike ped only. There's just a lot of nuances in an electric shuttle transportation study that would need to be done, etc., and the price would be more than triple. But the final report will be posted today, hopefully. Short synopsis, and we're going to be sending a joint memo from Newton and Needham working group to Mayor Fuller and Newton, and to the select board here in Needham on our recommended next steps.
And I did view the meeting, the presentation at the select board meeting, and actually the one before that. And, you know, having worked on this issue for a number of years, many years, let me approach this in a couple of different ways. I think number one, I do believe that we should be building the right of way to 34 feet in width to not foreclose a future electric shuttle transportation option. And the reason why I say that is with the MBTA Communities Act and the likely 1,000 or more units of additional residential housing in Needham Heights, in and around Needham Heights, as well as additional business growth, Muzzy rebuilding, the Wexford area rebuilding, and I'm talking 10 to 20 years out. But we have to look that far out when we're doing something like this. We're only going to have one shot to build a bridge over 128. It's not like we're going to be able to come back and after building a bike ped bridge, come back and say, hey, somebody should have thought about this. We need a transportation option. Northland is building 1,200 units of housing on the Newton side on Needham Street. I honestly believe that when you take a look at 10 to 20 years out, we're looking at 10,000+ more people that will be living, working, and visiting this corridor in less than a 2-mile stretch. And to spend what is likely to be 25 to 30 million, I don't believe the 7 years is a possible doable scenario. We're likely at 10 years at 30 million for a bike ped. I understand that it's likely to be twice as much. But there were people in Newton that were saying it would be 10 times as much. Well, that isn't going to happen. So what I will say is the prior board, and I know that there's discussions on the current select board about this. The prior select board was all unanimously in favor of pursuing, looking at, and studying a multimodal pathway. What are the benefits of that? What are the pros? Well, the pros are numerous, including you're going to have thousands and thousands more people in this corridor. You're going to have the ability of bringing an electric shuttle, some level of transportation from Newton all the way into Needham, pushing the commuter rail back and being able to make the connection to the south section. If we don't do this, if we don't try to do this, we are foreclosing forever the ability to connect. There'll be a roughly 3-mile off-road disconnect, 2 to 3 mile off-road disconnect, but realistically, that isn't realistic for people that are walking, or most people that are biking, or people that want to shop. I mean, and let me say this, that environmentally, I also believe it's the best option to get people out of their cars. And so I'm going to go so far as to say, having been involved with this discussion for many years, it's going to take roughly, I'm going to say 3 to 5 million from Needham, our share to do the bike ped part of it. It would also the also other advantages. It wouldn't require the need for a quiet zone, which is currently estimated at 6 to 8 million. So there are innumerable savings: environmental, transit, connection. The connection from the bike ped presentation is Webster Street. It ends at Webster Street. It does nothing for us. So for those reasons, as a town meeting member, I won't support an expenditure only for bike ped. We must look at multimodal. And let me end with this. 4 years ago, I had 2 productive conversations with Monica Tibbetts-Nutt, who was at that time, a member of the Fiscal Advisory Board of the T, who is now the acting director of the T. Her response to me at the time was unbelievably excited about what I had pitched her on a multimodal path and moving the commuter rail back to the junction or Hersey. And I think that the opportunity we haven't expended money on a quiet zone. We haven't expended money on this. We've got 3 state agencies we have to deal with: MassDOT, MBTA, and DCR, in order to accomplish this. For us not to try the future. I mean, we're talking something. The need that we're going to have is 10 to 20 years. I'm looking around the screen. Yeah, I'm the oldest one here. I probably won't be here, but it's not a matter of whether it's going to be good for me or not. I think what I'm talking about is it's going to be good for the town, and it's going to be good for the corridor and the region. This will provide a transit option within town if we can do this. Yeah, it's going to require a lot of work, and I get that. But for the years that I put in on the board, and I know that the current board members, doing the work isn't a problem. Doing the work, it's yes, you've got to manage it and put it against other other initiatives, but I think this is an important enough try to give it a shot. So
thank you, John. James, you have a quick comment?
Hopefully. The whole reason for the feasibility study was to do what John was looking at. I mean, does it make sense? And the pretty strong conclusion by the engineering firm, although they're neutral officially on this, but certainly the working group, is it doesn't make sense. And the main reason is not even cost, although it is going to be 3+ times probably when you add in all the costs, but it does not connect to either transit in Newton or transit in Needham. And therefore, and MBTA is willing to lease it, which tells us they're not actually interested in the foreseeable future, and I'm talking 20, 30 years, their capital purview, in transit in this corridor. If you read the report, it's pretty clear what the barriers and potential benefits are. And I'm afraid that, as far as I know, MBTA is not considering closing down the commuter rail line from the Heights to either the junction or Hersey. I mean, I know John's an advocate of that, but as the MBTA is not doing anything in that regard, as far as we know.
I have a question. Are we is there something is this just a discussion of the report? Are we considering something here? Is there a position that we need to take?
No, there's nothing to vote on or a position. This is just an update from Shane on what's going on with the community study. And as he said, the report should be out today. Is that correct, Shane? Yep.
I have a question for Shane, Stacy, if I may. Shane, to your knowledge, you were working with the company GPI that was doing the feasibility. Was there any discussion? The issue of modality and an electric shuttle is something that most people that I speak to, they don't understand, they can't see, they can't envision. But was there discussion about the future population growth of that corridor. And I'm, because, you know, where do you put all the cars from 10 or more thousand people that will be circulating through such a small area without having a release? And you know, was there any discussion about future growth? And was that discussed? What was the nature of that discussion? And if it was rejected, for what reason?
Yeah, so that's a great question, John. There was lots of discussion on that. However, that was not part of the feasibility study. Essentially, the discussion that was surrounding future growth and the recommendation would be, in order to make firm decisions on that, we would need to do a comprehensive transportation study in and around the entire corridor. Because with the unknowns and not having that information, the only information that we really had to go on is the MAPC study from, I believe, 10 years ago, but so much has changed in that 10 years that since they've released that study. So what they looked at simply in this discussion for this feasibility study was simply, what are your options there? Can you make the options work? What are some pros and cons to those options? And what are associated costs with inflation 7 years out, knowing that it would take 7 years to do design, go after funding, and actually start some build. So we did have some of those discussions. Almost every meeting we had those discussions. But again, a feasibility study was just really about, could it be done? What are the options? But James did hit the nail on the head with one of the biggest recommendations or things that came to light very early in this process was, because you don't have connectivity there, it doesn't make a lot of sense to pursue the electric rail, not the electric rail, but the electric shuttle option, because there really is no connectivity. As far the furthest you can go right now would be from Webster, because it only focused from Webster up to Oak Street, from Webster to Oak, and that doesn't include what Newton would have to do on their side. The trail in Newton currently only goes up to Mechanic Street behind the Newton TV and ends right there where the National Lumber is. So without being able to make that connection through the entire corridor all the way down through Dover, which would be the best option, the electric shuttle just doesn't make sense at this point.
Was there a discussion within your committee or with the consultants about, if the bike ped bridge is built over 128, the ability to widen that at a future time?
Yeah, so if you recall, John, and I'd encourage anyone to go watch these. Everything's posted on our website. All the community meetings we had, as well as the select board meeting, all those meetings are posted. So under option 2, which is the bike ped electric shuttle option, there are 3 different alternates, if you will, on different ways you can build this. One of those alternates would be that you could add a second bridge alongside the existing bridge over the Charles River. And one would be dedicated to the electric shuttle. One would be dedicated to bike ped.
What about over 128?
Yeah, the biggest challenge over 128 would be just putting the bridge there. So we did have some of those discussions on, could you build the bridge over 128 to accommodate the electric shuttle? Well, yes, you could, but of course that inflates the cost. So, but yeah, we did consider all those options.
I mean, I saw the cost at 2x from your presentation, and I did see the presentation, and I know that there was a comment that was made about, but I didn't quite understand the comment that was made relative to, could you widen the bridge over 128, but it seemed to be unclear, or it was not discussed. Because my concern is doing this and taking 10 years to get it done or more, and then the need presents itself in the future.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk about, if we built a pedestrian bridge over 128, could you come back and widen it at a later date? Really, the determination was made, if you're going to build a bridge over 128, you would either build it for bikes and peds only or bikes, peds, shuttle. You wouldn't want to come back and try to go through that entire process again of trying to add on to the bridge that you just built. So it was really either one or the other.
James?
Just quickly, what was discussed, John, is it would make more sense to run this shuttle on the existing roadway. And the time savings, if it were to be on the trail, and again, it would be a one-way shuttle, of course, and one bus at a time. No, one bus at a time, because we're not going to add 2 lanes of traffic.
Right, so, it would go all the way and then all the way.
Well, all the way is a limited distance because it can't connect, and that's the problem. And just to be clear, the cost differential is much more likely 3 plus X, not 2X. If you look at the numbers and you look at the notes, the alternative 2 with the shuttle doesn't include all the improvements beyond Oak Street in Newton, or if it is going to connect with Needham Heights, the changes from Webster to the Heights. They did look at the option you suggested, John, about phasing this. Build it ped bike only with the option not foreclosed in the future. And it was determined it didn't make sense, as Shane said, either do it now or don't do it. But the clear consensus among the working group you've seen is to do James, the bike ped only.
Who was on the working group?
I'm gonna shut this conversation down because we got to move on. We've got about 10 minutes.
James, can you and I talk offline?
Yep, talk offline. All the other meetings are available on our YouTube channel. So,
and the list of the working group is in the feasibility study. John, have a look.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Mobility Planning and Coordination Committee. The select board reached out, or the town manager's office, to ask if anybody from this committee would like to be appointed to that committee. I did send an email out. I did only receive 1 response, and I just wanted to put it back out there one more time to see if anybody else is interested in joining this committee. Negative. Looks like James is the only winner chicken dinner, James.
Okay.
Congratulations. So I will reach out to the town manager's office and let them know that. And then they'll probably be reaching out directly to you, James.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Trail maintenance and resurfacing. This is sort of our standing agenda item. Does anybody have any questions about what's going on? Shane, do you have anything to update?
I talked to James earlier about this. Just we're in the midst of CIP currently, and I could reassure the group that the trail maintenance for the existing trail is on our CIP, and it has been in plenty of discussions as Parks and Forestry and Parks and Recreation are working together as building out our CIP. What year it's in, I don't know where that falls currently, but it has been part of the discussions, and we've gotten quotes, those sort of things to build that out.
Shane, may I ask, are there any plans to improve the surface down? Thinking like the area with a fence closer to the trail, the Fisher Street side. There's some, we've had, I think almost from day one, we've had problems with some erosion there. There was a stream that ran across it during high water periods, and I'm wondering if anything is planned on that.
Yeah, the discussion's been trail maintenance along the entire corridor there. The existing trail wouldn't just focus on one section, but it'd focus on the entire section and doing improvements where we need to. I understand there's some washout that we need to do, fix that washout, and then also put down the appropriate stone dust, because I've learned that the stone dust that is currently on there isn't the preferred stone dust for that type of trail.
So great. So it's not, when you say maintenance, you don't mean just like mowing and stuff like that.
No. We mean actually going in there and putting additional stone dust down, building up areas where we need to for the erosion, etc.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We've recommended, and I've talked to Shane about this, resurfacing it, and we've sent the specs of the proper stone dust, and it's not that high cost because the quarter is all prepared and stuff. So hopefully in the next year or two, it'll be resurfaced with proper stone dust.
Great. We did get a statement from the Zoom room. It's from Jeff Friedman. He just wanted to let us know that the Bruce Friedman Rail Trail, which is the Concord to Lowell Trail, received substantial funding from the Mass Department of Transportation. Suggests maybe checking with Representative Denise Garlick whether we can get a mass funding for Chestnut Street extension of the rail trail. So I just wanted to put that out there as that was mentioned. And moving on, anybody have any topics for future meetings? Looks to me like rail trail and certainly the community way will stay on there as standing agenda items for a bit. And then we can talk about next meetings. We typically meet quarterly. I would assume that would make us the next meeting should be in December sometime. Does that work for everybody? Early December, before we get too crazy. I will set up a meeting for early December, and then we can go from there.
Stacy, what was Jeff's last name, please?
Friedman.
Just so you know, the association has been in touch with Representative Garlick about this already.
Yes, but we always read the questions and
sure
from the public. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Once again, we'll go roll call for all in favor. James?
Yes.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Chris Gerstle?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.